welcome back to the Wilmington Chamber's podcast, where we have a lot of fun, and you almost caught us having some fun before we started here today. But at our last podcast, we got to know our board chair, Neil Andrew, and this time we're going to get to know one of the Wilmington Chamber's newest employees. Josh Hallingse is the Vice President, Small Business Development, Retention, and Expansion. So he's going to help us grow our small businesses in the community. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me. That's the idea, and we're really optimistic about what we're going to be able to do over the next year. So it's exciting to be here.
So tell me, what is it that you're excited about?
So, well, on a personal note, I'm new to Wilmington. In the last episode, we heard from Neil, and he's been from Wilmington all his life. And so it's nice being in a new area. I'm originally from the western part of the state. So being in a new topography, there's just so much good stuff going on in Wilmington. There's some really dynamic industries that are growing that we really have the opportunity to be a part of right now. To better the future. So, those are some things I'm really interested in being part of.
Cool.
Yep.
I'm excited to have you on our team. I'm excited about having the addition in our community. So beyond being excited to be in Wilmington, how did you get into economic development? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I was in school and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do city management at one point in time, and I had a professor that was an economic developer for Ashe County, and she pulled me aside after a really lengthy budget class and said, you might want to consider economic development. And I think she was telling me that I wouldn't be good at budgeting. So she connected me with the economic development developer for the city of Asheville. Had a great internship with him in the summer, which kind of goes to this whole workforce and talent pipeline of really mentoring the next generation, how important that is to getting people excited about what you do and plugged in with the the organizations that really need folks. And economic development was it. I loved it. I got my first job, real job, not an internship that paid money, in Henderson County, which is a suburb of Asheville, Buncombe County. It's almost like Pender County or Brunswick County of the western part of the state. Really enjoyed it. Did mostly industrial, traditional industrial development. Worked on some really cool projects that I had no idea what to expect as my first job. And the first I thought was just so fascinating because you never get to see the behind the scenes. It was we were certifying a new industrial park outside of the Asheville Regional Airport. And it was about 100, I'm going to get it wrong actually, it was about 250 acres. And the owner...
It's hard to believe there's 250 acres
flat
in
it
Asheville.
Wasn't flat. Let's just say it that way. Kind of what we experienced was mountain flat, so it's probably similar to coastal flat, right? So you couldn't really develop a lot of it. You want to really respect the integrity of the ground and nature around it, which kind of gets back to the owner of the property. It had been in his family for generations, multiple generations, dating back past World War II and even probably before that. But he was very mindful of how he wanted to develop the property. And he wanted to go for job creation and something that would be a lasting legacy for his family. And he had the idea of having a LEED certified industrial park in the western part of the state, which at the time and still now, I don't know if there's really such a thing. There's a handful around the country. But that was the idea. And we worked with him as the Economic Development Agency to put it through the state's certified site program. We had an amazing economic developer leading the organization I got to learn from. Really worked over the course of several years. I mean, really, it was probably 2 or 3 years and landed our first client, and it just happened to be Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, who, from a corporate perspective, absolutely embraced the green and the LEED certification idea behind what this family was trying to achieve. So, it kind of goes back to really having an impact, a positive impact to the community that you're working, trying to work over the long term to realize tangible goals, and really set the tone for that park. They've landed. I haven't been there since they landed another one, but they landed another very large automotive project there, again, built a facility to, I believe it was silver standards, so pretty lofty goals for that industry. And so it's fun to look back, but it's also, you look at how important advocacy is to what the chambers generally work on, what economic developers, what our partners at Wilmington Business Development work on a daily basis, that they're in the weeds and looking at all kinds of stuff, but it's that long game and trying to be impactful for the community at large.
Cool. So, Josh, most of your jobs have been for economic development organizations versus a chamber of commerce. So what have you learned since November when you joined the chamber team?
Yeah, so that's the exciting thing. I've always been on the economic development side, and in our circles, there's a lot of economic development organizations that don't necessarily work with chambers, or there's some tension. And what I've learned being on the chamber side recently is how important advocacy is, and how willing this chamber is to take positions on things. And that's I think it is unique in chambers, honestly. I think it's important. I think that shows how this chamber is different, and that it's more than convening and networking. There's real outcomes that the organization is trying to work towards. And I think that's just a signal of how mission-driven this organization is, and that's why I'm excited to be a part of it.
What have you been surprised about as on the teams? Come on, there's got to be something, a task you've had to do because you're one of a team, or...
Well, in my first week, you guys threw me an oyster roast, right?
We
So
did.
that
That's
was
true.
awfully nice and welcoming.
We like to throw
that was a
parties.
surprise.
And we had 300 of your closest friends show up.
That's right.
Your new
yeah,
closest
yeah.
friends.
So I got to being on the other side of the state. I wasn't really accustomed to oyster roast, so that was a lot of fun. I certainly enjoyed it. So it was a great time. On the team, trying to think of anything that's out of the ordinary. I can't think of anything except for how many meetings you all have. It's if you're a member of the chamber and you're sitting around idle and you just don't know how to plug in with this organization, I promise you there's probably not an evening or a night that you couldn't find something to do with the chamber.
Yeah,
That's true.
we're
That's
pretty-
true. And if you're not a member, you can call 910-762-2611, and anybody at the chamber can help you plug into all of those
Yeah.
fantastic opportunities.
Yeah, we just did our annual meeting last week, and we found out we're doing just under 100 events a year between committees, council meetings, networking opportunities. So if you're looking to meet people, come spend some time with us, right? So cool.
What about in the early days working at the chamber where we found out that U.S. Highway was about to be closed?
Yeah.
And your
Yeah,
involvement
yeah.
with the community on that. Tell us a story about that.
That was kind of a fun one and a unique one. So I think it was my first month on the job. I can remember it all runs together
Yeah,
at this point.
it does.
It's 100 events.
we were notified kind of last minute from one of our chamber members that they had received a notice from the railroad that they had to do some critical mission-sensitive repairs to their line to keep rail moving in our region, but that was going to require closing down a major highway in our community, and particularly impacting some local manufacturing and industrial businesses. So, taking that personally, and I think the chamber being proactive assigned me the duty of calling a lot of those businesses on that
He
particular
says
stretch of highway.
assigned, but he quickly said this needs to be a part of our plan,
Yeah.
is to reach out to every
Yeah.
business along the corridor. It's a great idea.
Yeah, so we reached out in really trying to provide some advance notice because railroads aren't necessarily the best communicators with businesses, and that's nothing against the railroad, but they've got large projects to tackle, and it kind of slips through the cracks sometimes. So that's where a chamber of commerce can really be a unifier and try to communicate with folks. And then on the advocacy side, working with you, Natalie, on really trying to figure out, is there a potential to try to keep the road open? And that was that kind of going back to that advocacy side and how how forward-thinking and progressive the chamber is in taking positions and really trying to work the problem and seeing how we might be able to reduce a 7-day closure down to potentially 2 or 3. And Neil knows it as a small business owner. Time's money, and if you can avoid a closure or impacting your truck traffic coming in and out, or your employees having to reroute a 30-minute detour, that goes a long way. So.
We had a lot of good partners on that, too. State Senator Michael Lee, NCDOT board member from our region, Landon Zimmer, obviously Neil and others in our chamber board membership helped to reach out. And it was it was an awareness thing, right? The railroad company was going about their business. Mm-hmm. They weren't thinking about everybody else's business. And so we really just had to make them aware. And it's just a lesson in don't just sit back and complain. See what you can do about it. And we did. It was announced as a 5-day closure. And by the time we were finished, it was just over 2 days. So 3 work days we won back on behalf of those businesses. It was a true win. So Josh, tell us something about you that maybe your personal life that people might have an interest in learning about. I know you brought a family with you.
We did, and that was really the motivating factor. Obviously, the job's really important. We were really excited to be here, but we looked at Wilmington and we're just like, there's just something about it. There's history, there's culture, there's obviously the ocean and the water. So I brought 2 little kids, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, who were so excited to move to the beach. And my wife worked for the North Carolina port, so she's just down the street from the Chamber of Commerce. So that's kind of my background. A little bit about me. I grew up in the mountains, so this is very new to me. But my wife is from New Orleans, or she calls it New Orleans, which is actually where my father's from, New Orleans. So I have maybe the ocean or salt water in my blood. So it's been kind of a fun thing to explore that element of our country a little bit.
That's great. Speaking of New Orleans, Mardi Gras is coming up, and we happen to be hosting an event on Mardi Gras. The Intentional Collisions event will be hosted by End of Days Distillery. So we'll be celebrating our own version of Fat Tuesday here in Wilmington.
I like it.
Grateful to
be there.
Excite Credit Union for sponsoring that one with us, but also to End of Days for hosting us for that event. March 1st, I think it's from 5:30 to 7:30. So look forward to having everybody join us for one of our events.
One of our 100 events in a year.
One of 100.
Josh, what kind of goals have you set for yourself and how you're going to help grow small business? Something exciting that you want to share with our viewers?
So I don't know how exciting it is, but I get excited about small business. And that's really my charge with the Chamber is small business development, business retention.
Maybe some attraction.
And attraction. But one of the key things, and it kind of goes back to that highway story, is being a good listener and trying to work kind of difficult problems in unique ways. And part of what economic development does is proactively reach out to small business owners, primarily in ways that they haven't been connected with in the past. And so, even if they're not a chamber member, we need their voice heard. We need to know what they're experiencing in order for our Chamber of Commerce to be effective and advocate for things that improve the local business climate. So, the formal way we do that is I reach out to business owners. So if you get a random call from Josh, please, I don't want to bother you, but I really do just want to have a conversation, get to know what's going on in your business and how we can improve the local business climate to hopefully help you, but also help your peers in the area. But we're also focusing on some key target markets in Wilmington. And I probably don't have to, this is not news to anybody watching this podcast, but there's some really exciting sectors that are growing in our country, and Wilmington's at the epicenter of a lot of that for our state, namely the fintech sector with some of our existing companies and some recent announcement, obviously, with Suzy and Encino that are doing some really tech-heavy, interesting work from a coastal historic city, but also going into sectors that are more traditional. It doesn't have to be fancy and tech-driven. It can be manufacturing, but on a smaller scale. Family owned is when you look at the demographic of Wilmington owned businesses, there's just a ton of sole proprietor or LLC companies that are small footprint in terms of employment, but doing global work. So they're reaching not just Wilmington customers, but they're all over the state and all over the world.
Awesome. Josh, thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Wilmington Chamber's podcast. We are your advocate. You heard that. Josh is all about helping small businesses. We're all about advocating. If you get a call from Josh, take it. He's not selling you. He wants to help you. If you need help, if you're a small business owner, call the Chamber and ask to speak to Josh, or go to our website and send Josh an email. But again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on the Wilmington Chamber podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.